Hey, so I was just watching this hot take video from this guy who I have followed for a while now. And basically, he was saying that all of the artists that he sees right now kind of look the same. They all do the same videos. They all use the same filters and robot noises and all this stuff. And it kind of made me think, like, is that true? Like, are all the artists doing the same thing? Does all art look the same? And I think I disagree with what he's saying. But it made me think of a bigger point, which is that there is a difference between the way that we as like art facilitators or like people who help artists but who aren't necessarily like making the art every single day. Well, some of us are trying, but not everybody. I mean, not everybody is making that, right? Like there's a difference between people who facilitate art and people who are artists sometimes, right? There are people who like think about the art history and things like that. So this made me think about when I was an art archivist. I would talk with people who had been artists for their entire lives, right? And I would like be working with their collections, and these are like, at least in the Pacific Northwest, like big name people, right? Like, well, I don't know if I can say exactly who they are, but like people who had been creating for like 100, 100 years, but like 60 years, right? Like the seminal voices of the Northwest. And I'd be like, what do you think about like the Northwest style? What do you think about like this specific movement? Like, what do you think about like Louis Bunce's, his, you know, group of people that he was working with? And they would be so averse to the idea that there were broader stylistic movements that were happening in the art community. And it made me think about this guy's video because he's saying, hey, I noticed these broader stylistic movements, and artists on an individual level are like, no, don't define me. And it's interesting, and I think in a societal way, this is kind of a thing that's going on, where people don't want to be defined by broader things, right? Like they don't want to be grouped together. People want to live very individually. They want to exist on an individual level and be understood that way. And it's a really good example of art being a microcosm of the greater society that we exist in, right? Like it's just kind of cool, right? Like that's a thing that's happening at the highest levels of society, where people are like, don't define me. You don't have that right to define me like that. And then art is also doing that. It's kind of interesting that like art reflects everything around it, which kind of proves an art historical theory of like, you have to look at everything around a piece of art to understand why it's being produced that way, right? Like, why might there be stylistic tendencies in art? Maybe because we live in this panoptic, like, social media society. I don't know. Those are just my rambling thoughts. So thanks for sticking with me if you did, and maybe buy a sticker.